So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and your history and what you're doing now? And that would be great.
Yeah, sure. My background since 1991 has been in the holiday park industry. So I left the forces in 91 and I was an electrician. And I was thinking, what am I going to do? And I fell into the holiday park industry, literally. I went to sell caravans up in the northeast, and I stayed in it until 2016, so 25 years. And during that time, I spent about 3 years selling caravans. I spent 7 years as a caravan sales manager, and then I had 17 years nearly as a park GM. And I've worked for some small independents, and I've worked for some of the big groups. Two very, very different businesses within the industry as well. And after going from 15 or 16 years with the big groups to an independent, you actually suddenly need to adapt how you work very quickly. It's a completely different, there's no fat in the team. You don't have somebody to do everything for you. In the big groups, you're kind of orchestrating, aren't you, all day?
Sure.
And then you go and work for the smaller independents, you could be cutting the grass one day and down a drain the next day. But you know what? It was good. It was good. It was good experience, and it was an eye opener. But you do have to adapt the way you behave with the independents to the big groups. It's a different meal ticket completely. So I did that, and then for most of that time, I'd been a client of ParcVu, which is the park management software, and so I kind of became my comfort blanket. It's something that I've used on most parks I've worked at, and I've actually been to take over parks and manage parks for independent families and businesses, and I've not liked the system that's in there, and said, would you have a look at ParcVu, and kind of got ParcVu as it was then to come in and do a demonstration and put it in. And because, like I said, it's my comfort blanket. I'm so used to using it, but like losing my phone or something, it's like I see it every day, and I operate it every day, and I value it immensely. And then in 2016, I decided I'd had enough, and I left the industry. So 25 years of doing every weekend and every bank holiday probably just got to the end.
Yeah.
I was thinking, what am I going to do now? Pushing 50 at the time, thinking, this is all I know. All I know is the military and holiday parks. What am I going to do? And the week before I'd left my job, I'd asked ParcVu to come in and do a demonstration to the place I was working. And the then managing director, Brian Malarkey, phoned up the following week to see if he'd got the business. Have you had a decision yet? And he was told, Andy's left. He was like, oh my God, what's going on? I've not spoken to him. I've just left, and perhaps I should have spoken to him. Anyway, he called me at home because I know him. I've been a customer for 20 odd years. So he called me and he said, what's going on? And I said, well, I've decided I've left. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I'm reevaluating my future. I'm nearly 50. Do I want to do it for the rest of my life? And he said, come and work for me.
Wow.
I was like, doing what? I'm not a techie person. I'm a park manager. And he says, yeah, but you could go and sell the park management platform for me to holiday parks. You understand it, you get it. And I thought, well, that's an interesting concept, because I wasn't out of love with the holiday park industry. I was out of love with being a GM at that time.
Sure.
But I love the industry, and I thought, what a great idea, actually. And then he said to me, Christ, why did I say that? I don't think I've got a job for you. Let's meet up and have a discussion. So we did. We met up and had a discussion, and the rest is history. I went to work for them, and my prime role was going out and introducing ParcVu to new parks. And then in 2021, Brian decided he was going to step down and retire. And so myself and 3 colleagues got together and offered him a management buyout. We bought the business. So that's not far off 2 years now. We bought the business, and then we've just worked our backsides ever since. And I love it. It's fabulous. So I'm now the director and co-owner of ParcVu.
Victor Khayyam. Victor Khayyam. I like the product so much. I bought it. Yeah, the old brawn Victor Khayyam. Yeah. And it's true though, isn't it? I think what gives it real credibility and value is that I have been a customer for a long, long time, and I genuinely love the product, and I get excited when I'm demonstrating it, because I know what an arrival day looks like. I know how demanding customers can be, and rightly so. They're paying top dollar for holidays, paying top dollar for holidays.
they want to have fun and they want to be treated properly and they want to have good service and they don't like delays. And so I know that ParcVu does that, and that excites me that I can go and still be involved in the industry.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That's fascinating. Yeah, thanks for that, because it's really, it's kind of you guys are kind of like much further down the path in terms of history of business, and ahead of us at Holidaymaker in terms of developing your product, because we've spun it up from scratch in effect over 2.5-3 years. Although Dave, the other director and founder, he's been in the industry 15 to 20 years. I've been involved 5 or 6 years, and I've come from outside the industry, saying exactly what you've said, right? I've been a customer. I'm going, if I'm spending a couple of grand on a holiday in the UK at a park, I expect certain levels of experience, of standards, of quality of service that I get when I go anywhere else, and any other aspects of my life. So it's really interesting you say that, because I think we'll come to it. We'll come back to the expectations of guests and customers. I'd like to pick your brains on what you think that looks like going forward. But that's really interesting. Yeah, you are the Victor Kiam of the holiday park industry.
Do you know what? It's a good story, isn't it? And I tell when I go and see potential customers, I tell them the story because I'm quite proud of it. Actually,
you should
be. I'm proud. I've been a customer for so long, and I genuinely love the product. And then to be able to have the opportunity to buy the business with my colleagues and run the business and change the architecture and modernize it and doing all the things we're doing with it, it's really exciting. It's really exciting.
I think it really resonates as well. One of the things that's been refreshing to me working in the industry has been you can have a direct conversation with a park owner who gets the fact they've built their business. In some cases, they've seen a field and they've gone, I'm going to turn that into something. And so they've grafted and they've got around today. And actually, when I go and talk to them, I go, oh, we've built this from scratch. We wrote this on a piece of paper 3 years ago, and we've kind of put everything into this. They get it, because you're talking, well, they might be a £20 million business, but they built it over 20 odd years. So there's a mutual level of understanding, a bit like me and you have, right? It's like
the principle is the same, isn't it?
Everyone's trying to build a business and make it as successful as they can and give everyone a good standard of life and a good experience. That's great. Thank you, mate, for that. One of the things I'm quite conscious of is with everything that's going on in the economy and the world at the moment, there's a lot of pressures on everyone. And if you read the papers, it's kind of like, well, what's the point?
Don't read the papers.
That's the answer, isn't it? Specifically, hospitality as a bigger whole, there's lots of questions around that, the staff shortages, the kind of inability for people to stay in the post for any length of time, and cash in the pocket. What do you think are there any specific challenges that you see the park industry with both your hats on, GM and director, owner of a company, a software company now? What kind of challenges do you think parks are facing and the market's facing over the next year or two? Kind of generally, but then maybe some specifics that you've noticed.
I think generally just getting back to reality, because we had the pandemic and the business just boomed. And I see a real mixture of things going on in the park place. So I see some parks where they have they've embraced it and they've invested heavily in the product, and they've managed to retain, not all of, because there's a pent-up demand for people to get on an aeroplane and fly to the sun, isn't there? Let's be honest.
It is very much so. Yeah.
And you hear a lot of things. You hear a lot of people giving a lot of reasons why you should holiday in the UK. Airport queues, security, blah 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 blah. These things are all genuine. They're all genuine reasons why you should stay in the UK. But the airline industry will tell you another genuine reason why you should go abroad.
Yeah, they're just as powerful in that.
So you're massively competing with that market. And I think what's happened is the pandemic has allowed the UK holiday market to grow its client base, because it took people on that predominantly would always go abroad. Yeah. But it's how you keep those people now. And I think it goes back to one simple thing. You keep them by giving them a positively outrageous service. There's no other way to do it. When people, and I've seen this, I've seen people spending £2,000 for a week in a lodge, with a beautiful outlook over the hills with a stunning hot tub and great facilities and a golf course and fishing lakes, and people will pay the dollar.
Yeah.
But because they're paying the dollar, if you don't look after them, you ain't getting them back, and you only get one chance. So I think that's a big challenge.
Mm.
And I think not adopting tech is a big challenge.
Okay. In what? Yeah, go on. That's really interesting. How do you?
In the way that, how can I put this? Generally speaking, something just doesn't come along that's taking you from this level to this level. Tech is incremental, small steps.
Yeah.
So various things happen, and then other things happen, and things get bolted on. And do you understand where I'm coming from? I'm not a techie person. I'm a park operator, so I need to just think about the words.
No,
but
fine.
if you don't get on the train and you don't get on the journey, and you miss steps 1, 2, 3, 4, to then come in and go, right, now we're ready to go, and we'll join at step 5. You've got 5 times as much work to do to get there as if you took the incremental steps. I suppose you could say, people say, don't run before you can walk.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same with tech.
Yeah.
Just what are you doing in your business, and how are you using tech to give you a competitive edge and an advantage? And if you're not, then consider it. But just take small steps. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
No.
You can do it in small incremental steps. But if you miss those steps, you've got this big void to fill. When you do wake up and smell that tech is real, you smell the coffee, you've got this huge big cavern to leap over to get to where you want to be. So I think that's a big risk. Not getting on board, not taking those little incremental steps.
Can I explore that a little bit more? Because one thing I've noticed in the holiday park industry and in other industries I've worked in, but specifically in the park industry, I suppose, there's a distrust of tech. And I think there's a distrust of, no one on this call, obviously, but there's a distrust of tech suppliers in general.
Yeah, sure.
A, do you think that's a valid observation? And B, what do you think us as software providers and also parks can do to remove that mistrust, uncertainty in that instance?
Yeah, I think it is valid to a degree. There's a lot of, and I don't just mean in park management software, but there's a lot of tech out there, and there's a lot of rubbish out there, and there's a lot of great stuff out there. And how do you, if you are not techie minded, and I'm not, how do you differentiate between what's good and what's bad?
Yeah.
If you don't understand tech and you put somebody in front of you who's talking technical language, you get lost completely. I have conversations with some of our developers, and I'm just like, what on earth have they just said? Equally, I could have conversations around how to sell caravans and lodges, and they won't understand what I do. So we all do our thing, and we do our thing in our own way. But it's very easy to bamboozle a non-techie person with tech speak, and if you are that way inclined, you could bamboozle people to the extent that you could dupe them into doing something that's wrong.
Interesting,
and I've seen that. I've seen that in many different walks of life, and the difficulty with that is it's easy to do, and it's very short-termism, isn't it? It's short-term thinking, because all that happens is 6 months down the line, you get bitten on the backside when somebody goes, what is this I've done here?
Why do we need to?
What is this? This does nothing that you said it was going to do. I'm speaking with a company at the minute who are they're tech wary, shall we say?
Okay, it's a nice phrase.
We spent a lot of money putting some transport. They have a transport business. They put some transport tech in, some transport management stuff. I don't know what it was. Don't really matter. And spent a lot of money on it. And turns out it was just a bag of spanners. It was rubbish, and they didn't use it, and they wasted all the money. Yeah. They also own holiday parks, and I'm talking to them about putting my park management software in there. Of course they're worried. Of course they're resistant, because they've been bitten. They've been bitten. So how do you get over that? I guess the only way you can get over that is by referring to your longevity and referring to your existing clients, and just being frank with people. I think the one thing I don't even try to do it. I just do it. I'll just tell you straight. Yeah. I don't. It sounds really bad, but I don't want your business if it's the wrong business, because it'll just come back and bite me on the backside. And in 6 months' time, you'll be bad mouthing me because you've done something that you shouldn't have done. So I've had it where I've had customers that I've said no to.
Yeah.
But then a couple of years later, we've said yes to because the timing's right. So it's hard. It is hard, because if you don't understand it, then, well, you don't understand it, do you?
It's very difficult, isn't it? Yeah. And but that iterative nature of kind of like, you don't need it. In another life, when I worked for a couple of, I worked for Reuters, the news agency, and they implemented a massive Salesforce, big CRM system. They only needed to use 5% of it. That's all they needed to use. But they were sold everything. And obviously they were going, well, we don't, after 6 months, they were like, well, why are we spending X millions? Yeah. We're actually only using this tiny little chunk of it. And whether or not they had been duped, that's how they felt. And I suppose taking that angle back to guests as well, if they're expecting one experience and actually their experience is complete, they are queuing up to get into on a Friday afternoon, it's taking them an hour to get in.
Yeah.
They're going to think, well, so it kind of works both ways, doesn't it? I suppose that's what you're saying.
I always used to say when I was managing parks, it doesn't matter whether they're right or wrong. If that's their perception, that's their reality.
Yeah.
And in their eyes, that's what's happened. It doesn't matter whether it has happened, because there'll always be a difference of opinion. But if that's what they believe has happened, that's their reality.
Yeah.
That's the danger.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting.